So I'm going to look at public relations from a vantage point where I have some expertise in, and actually two vantage points that are related to all of you in this room as leaders either within an enterprise or helping enterprises. The two vantage points are from the vantage point of you as influencers in the enterprise, for example, influencing key stakeholders outside the organization, but increasingly I'm beginning to understand and appreciate public relations in the sense that you're playing a bigger and bigger role. Corporate communications is beginning to play a bigger and bigger role within the enterprise, even in terms of shaping business strategy, which I hadn't realized until Frank had invited me and did some background research. Even in terms of joint ventures and investment, very important investment decisions like mergers and acquisitions, where you folks are coming to the table, which is amazing, which is how it should be. The second vantage point is going to be from you as decision makers. So that's where my expertise is. And I'm going to do all these through the lens of the instinctual or the emotional brain. And I'll tell you momentarily why I believe it is very important, based on my research and all that I've observed so far. And then what I'll do is I'll present a framework, some concepts, and what I'd like to do very quickly, and that's what we had a discussion, Frank and I, we'd like to engage in a conversation with you, because what I'd like to leave the table today with is probably one or two research projects that the IPR would be interested in sponsoring. Not that I need any money, but sponsoring in the sense of access to organizations and so on. So that's at least my goal at the end of the day. Okay, so why is it important? Why do I believe that being concerned about the instinctual emotional brain is so important? It's important because even though the human brain is so sophisticated, I mean, it's amazing what the human brain can do. I mean, like other animals cannot do. I mean, one thing, critical difference is that we can think ahead, which means we can strategize, right? We can hypothesize, synthesize, and so on and so forth. Having said that, most of our behaviors, most of our decisions are constantly being shaped at the instinctual, at the emotional level, whether we like it or not. If you ask me to put a number to it, I would say about 90 to 95%. And if you have read Danny Kahneman's recent book, Thinking Fast and Slow, I don't know how many of you have read that book. Yeah, I mean, that's the same premise that he has in there, that most of our decisions are being shaped by fast-thinking systems, right? What I call our instinctual systems. Even important decisions, we might think that we are being rational, but in general, unless you're talking about a highly proceduralized decision, structure, so think about a surgeon, what the surgeon does. Think about a pilot, what the pilot does. These are very proceduralized, so they overtrain for those contingencies. But if you're talking about unstructured decision environments, which is what we often face, there you'll see that even for important decisions, even in the business-to-business space, you'll see that 90 to 95% of our decisions are still being shaped by the instinctual emotional brain. We might think we're being rational, but the rational brain is but a slave to the emotional brain. And what I believe that happens is that, and there's some neural evidence coming out of the cognitive psychology, neuropsychology, is that the rational brain, rather than being rational, simply rationalizes. It just rationalizes what the emotional brain has already decided to do. Okay? And because it has such a profound impact on our decisions, or our stakeholders' decisions and so on, it behooves us to understand how it works, how the instinctual brain works. And the beauty here lies in its simplicity, because the instinctual brain is something that all animals have. So this has been honed, this has been perfected over millennia through the process of evolution. Very simple, unlike the cognitive brain, the cortical structures and so on. So let me kind of talk about how the instinctual brain is geared to behave at any given point.
Just use the arrows.
Yeah, I'll do that. Okay. Think about how the instinctual brain is geared to behave at any given point in time. It will most often map onto what I call the X framework. It's also sometimes I refer to as the bow tie framework, and you'll see why in a second. So what I've done here is broken down emotion into its two components. One is the valence component. So there are some positive emotions like excitement, fun, exhilaration, and so on. Negative emotions in the valence side might be some boredom, apathy, etc. And then you have the physiological arousal. So there are certain emotions associated with high physiological arousal, like fear, stress, and so on. And then you have low physiological arousal, which will be things like feeling comfort, feeling serene, meditative, and so on. The way the instinctual brain is geared to behave at any given point in time is along these two pathways. One is the stress to comfort pathway, governed by these two neuromodulators, two neurochemicals. One is a neuromodulator, which is serotonin, Another is a steroid, which is the cortisol. That is a stress chemical. And the way you think about this is it is serotonin divided by cortisol, which means that there's more serotonin, you're going to be more towards the comfort end of the pathway. If there's more cortisol related to serotonin, you'll be more towards the stress end of the pathway. One thing to notice here is that cortisol levels don't change across a period of day and so on and so forth. They tend to be very steady. If you're stressed, that's going to be cortisol. Serotonin levels can begin to change. As you age, for example, serotonin levels will tend to drop. And that has implications for the kind of decisions that stakeholders will end up making, that you end up making, and so on. Okay? Even time of day will have an effect. As the day begins to progress, you see this neuromodulators like serotonin and dopamine will tend to drop. And therefore, it has implications for when you're trying to influence a stakeholder in the afternoon versus in the morning. Right? And so we'll talk about those kind of implications. We'll talk about alcohol, what does that do in the mix and so on.